Story 1: The Motel Room Mirror. I was driving through the high desert of Nevada, the kind of stretch where the gas stations are at 80 miles apart and the only radio you can pick up is static. After a day of fighting drowsy eyes and endless two-lane blacktop, I pulled off at a faded sign for Silver Sands Motor Lodge. The neon flickered, the parking lot was cracked and empty, but at that hour, it looked like heaven. The manager, an older woman in a windbreaker, gave me a room key without a word. Room 6. I parked right outside, grabbed my overnight bag, and let myself in. The room smelled like stale cigarettes and disinfectant. Standard fare: queen bed, nightstand, TV bolted to the dresser. The only odd thing was the mirror, a huge, old-fashioned rectangle above the desk, framed in chipped gold paint. I went about my usual routine, locked the door, washed up, called my girlfriend to let her know I'd made it safely. As I was brushing my teeth, I noticed the mirror again. It was just off. Not cracked or dirty, just off. My reflection seemed a fraction delayed, like a lag on a video call. I tested it, waving my arms slowly. My reflection matched. But only after the tiniest beat, not enough to swear by, enough to feel wrong. I laughed at myself. Long drives and caffeine can make you paranoid. I flicked off the bathroom light, crawled into bed, and scrolled my phone until my eyelids felt heavy. Around 2:15 a.m., I woke up freezing. The heater had gone silent, the air gone thin. The mirror glowed faintly from the bathroom nightlight, reflecting the whole room. I sat up, rubbing my arms, and my eyes went to the desk. My reflection was sitting up too, except I hadn't moved yet. I froze. Very slowly, I raised my right hand. In the mirror, my reflection raised its left. Not like a true mirror image, like it had chosen the opposite hand. I whispered, "Nope, nope, 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 nope." But my reflection smiled. My mouth was still a flat line. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but my legs felt nailed to the mattress. Then, from somewhere behind the mirror, came a sound like someone dragging fingernails across wood. The reflection tilted its head, the exact way a person leans toward a sound, but I didn't. It stood. I didn't. My heart slammed against my ribs. I scrambled for my shoes, eyes locked on the mirror. The other me on the other side was already halfway across its room, eyes locked on mine, still grinning. Its teeth looked too many, too white. I grabbed my car keys and bolted. As soon as I crossed the doorway, the room behind me seemed to go completely silent, like I'd stepped out of a recording. I sprinted to my car barefoot, jammed the key into the ignition, and peeled out of the parking lot. In my rearview mirror, I could still see my room window glowing. For a split second, I swore I saw a silhouette of myself standing there, hand pressed to the glass. I didn't stop until I hit a 24-hour diner 30 miles down the road. I parked under the lights and sat shaking at the counter, sipping burnt coffee until dawn. Later, when I Googled Silver Sands Motor Lodge, nothing came up. Not a single listing, no Yelp reviews, no mention anywhere. It's like the place didn't exist. I still don't know what I slept next to that night. A mirror, a window, a doorway. All I know is it looked exactly like me until it didn't. Story 2: The Bridge at Midnight. Everyone in our hometown had heard of the old iron bridge at the edge of county land. Built in 1911, 1 lane wide, black lattice sides still rusting from the last flood, it spanned a narrow gorge where the river ran fast even in summer. Kids called it the Vanishing Bridge because of the legend. At midnight, if you walked to the center alone, you'd hear footsteps behind you, and if you turned to look, you'd disappear. Most people laughed it off, but my 3 friends and I weren't most people. We'd spent our junior year chasing urban legends: the haunted orchard, the burned-down asylum, the crybaby tunnel. The bridge was our last big dare before graduation. We picked a Friday night in May. By day, the bridge looked weathered but harmless. By night, it was a black skeleton against the stars, the latticework throwing spiderweb shadows under the full moon. We parked a half-mile away to avoid being seen by the sheriff, grabbed our flashlights, and hiked the gravel road until the tree line opened and the bridge appeared. The temperature dropped as soon as we stepped onto the planks. The iron sides felt colder than they should have been, like touching ice. My friend Jamie cracked jokes about trolls under the bridge. Kim lit a cigarette and said, "At midnight, we're all going to be ghosts." We laughed, but it came out nervous. I checked my phone. 11:57. 3 minutes to go. We walked to the middle, where the planks creaked louder, and leaned on the railing to look down at the black water. It reflected nothing but a streak of moonlight. The wind died. The forest went silent. Even the river seemed to hush. 12 o'clock. At first, it was faint. A single footstep behind us. Then another. And another. Crisp as boots on dry wood, but we were all standing still. Jamie spun around, flashlight sweeping empty planks. "Cut it out," he hissed, thinking it was one of us, but we were all in a tight cluster. More footsteps. Getting closer. Kim's cigarette trembled in her hand. She whispered, "We're not alone." I felt the boards vibrate under my shoes like someone heavy was walking toward us. I turned my flashlight toward the far end of the bridge. Nothing. Swung it to the other end. Nothing. Then a shadow moved along the latticework, thin, human-shaped, gliding instead of walking. Jamie cursed and bolted toward the far end. The rest of us followed, sneakers slapping the boards, flashlights bouncing wild arcs of light. The footsteps behind us grew louder, like whatever it was had started to run too. We hit the far end and didn't stop, sprinting into the tree line, branches whipping our faces. Only when we reached the car did we dare look back. The bridge sat empty, silent under the moon. No shadow, no footsteps. We tumbled inside, slamming the doors, gasping. Jamie tried the ignition twice before it caught. We tore down the road, headlights cutting swaths of forest. Nobody spoke until we hit the highway. Later, back at my house, we compared what we'd seen. Jamie swore he saw a man in old overalls. Kim said she saw a child holding a lantern. I said I didn't see either, just a tall shadow moving like smoke. The next day, I went online to see if anyone else had experienced something similar. Buried in a forum about local legends was a post from 2006. It claimed that in the 1940s, a bus full of prisoners crashed off the bridge during a storm and all drowned. Since then, people said you could hear their footsteps at night trying to cross to the other side. We never went back. Even now, whenever I drive over a bridge at night, I roll down my window and listen for footsteps, just to make sure they're not keeping pace with me. Story 3. The Basement Apartment. When I first moved to the city, I was broke, desperate, and ready to live anywhere that wasn't my parents' garage. So when I saw a listing for a cozy basement studio in a century-old brownstone for half the price of anything else, I jumped at it. The landlord, a gray-haired man named Mr. Cantrell, met me at the street entrance and led me down a narrow flight of stairs into the bowels of the building. The door opened into a single low-ceilinged room with a kitchenette and a tiny bathroom tucked behind a sliding door. It smelled faintly of damp stone, but the rent was right, and I figured I'd fix it up with a few rugs and a dehumidifier. The only windows were high and small, showing just the sidewalk above. I signed the lease on the spot. The first week was fine. I painted the walls, moved in my thrift store furniture, and felt proud of my independence. But at night, when the building went still, the pipes began to talk. It started as a faint whispering, like running water, but with pauses, almost like words. I'd wake at 2 or 3 a.m. to find my radiator cold and the whispers traveling along the wall. Sometimes it seemed to come from the bathroom vent, sometimes from under the floor. One night, curious and annoyed, I pressed my ear to the vent above the kitchenette. A thin draft of cold air brushed my cheek. For a moment, the whispering stopped. Then a voice, low and hoarse, hissed, "Can you hear me?" I jerked back so fast I hit my head on the cabinet. My heart pounded in my throat. The vent went silent again. I told myself it was just city noise. Someone upstairs, pipes settling, imagination playing tricks. But the whispers returned the next night, more distinct. They said my name. I called Mr. Cantrell to complain. He sighed, said the building had quirks because it was built on old foundations, promised to send a plumber. No plumber ever came. Then came the scratching. It began behind the bathroom wall, a dry, rhythmic scrape, like fingernails on wood. It moved slowly, inching closer to the vent. Night after night, it got louder until I couldn't sleep without music playing. One morning, I woke to find a fine gray dust on the bathroom floor under the vent, as if something had been clawing through the plaster. I swept it up, heart hammering, and told myself it was just old masonry. That night, I taped the vent shut. At 3:14 a.m., the tape peeled back with a slow rip. The vent cover trembled. Then a hand, pale, thin, with too many knuckles, slid through the gap, feeling along the tile. I lunged for the light switch. The hand snapped back, vanishing with a hiss. My phone slipped from my fingers. I bolted up the stairs barefoot and pounded on Mr. Cantrell's door until he answered in his robe. I babbled about someone in the vents. He stared at me, eyes wide, then muttered, "You weren't supposed to stay down there after dark." That sentence still chills me. He went back inside and came out with a rusty keyring. He said, "Pack your things. I'll transfer you upstairs. No extra charge. Just don't go back down there tonight." I didn't argue. I stuffed my essentials into a backpack and fled to the street, shivering in the neon glow of the bodega. I didn't sleep until the sun rose. The next day, movers brought the rest of my stuff to a small studio on the top floor. I asked Mr. Cantrell who or what had been in the vents. He only said the building was complicated and that parts of the basement predated the city's sewer system. 3 months later, city inspectors closed off the basement entirely. Rumor was they'd found tunnels branching under several blocks, some ending in sealed stone chambers. Sometimes at night, in my top-floor apartment, I swear I can still hear the faint hiss of a voice drifting up through the pipes, whispering my name. Story 4. The Night Watcher in the Park. When you're a park ranger, night duty can feel like two different worlds, one where you're alone under the stars, and another where every tree feels like it's leaning toward you. In 2018, I was assigned the night watch at Pine Hollow National Park in Colorado. My job was straightforward: patrol the picnic areas, make sure campers had their fires out, lock the gates at midnight. Easy pay for solitude. The first few nights were quiet, almost soothing. My flashlight beam would skim over deer browsing the grass. Owls would blink at me from the branches. The park's visitor center sat in a clearing with a radio tower and a single security light buzzing over the door. It was my home base between rounds. Around my third week, small things started to feel wrong. Tools moved when I hadn't touched them. Doors creaked open after I'd latched them. And then there were the footprints, large, bare, almost human, pressed into the soft dirt near the trash bins. Each morning they vanished, like the ground had swallowed them. One night in October, the security light over the visitor center flickered out, plunging the clearing into darkness. I radioed maintenance, but no one answered. My truck's headlights barely cut the black. I felt exposed, as if every sound was amplified. Crickets, the wind sighing through the pines, my own heartbeat. On my second patrol that night, I saw movement near the tree line. A tall shape, gray and still, like a mannequin left in the woods. It didn't move when I shined my light on it. Its head was tilted too far to one side. I called out, thinking maybe it was a lost hiker. No answer. I took a step forward, it stepped back, vanishing into the dark. I chalked it up to my eyes playing tricks, but when I returned to the visitor center, the security camera monitors were filled with static, every single feed. Around 2:45 a.m., I heard my name over the radio, not a call sign, my name, drawn out like a whisper. "Name, come outside." I froze, Protocol said to stay in the building and call for backup, but the radio was dead when I tried to answer. Static hissed like someone breathing into the mic. I grabbed my flashlight and unholstered my sidearm. The door creaked as I pushed it open. Outside, the night was thick with fog rolling off the river. The security light flickered back on for a second, casting long shadows of the trees across the clearing. That's when I saw it again. Tall, thin, gray skin stretched over bones, no clothes. Its arms hung longer than they should. It stood just beyond the circle of light, head cocked, watching. "Who's out there?" I called, my voice cracking. It didn't move. Then, without walking, it was suddenly closer, like it had skipped the space between us, 1 second at the tree line, the next at the edge of the pavement. My flashlight flickered. My truck alarm went off by itself, horn blaring into the still night. I bolted into the cab, slammed the locks, and started the engine. The figure tilted its head, following me with eyes that looked like empty sockets. I floored it out of the clearing, gravel spitting behind me. As I drove down the service road, I glanced in the mirror. For a heartbeat, the figure was running alongside the truck, feet barely touching the ground, arms pumping with unnatural speed. Then, it simply wasn't there anymore. I didn't slow down until I hit the ranger station in town. I handed in my badge the next morning, officially citing personal reasons. Later, another ranger confided he'd seen something too, tall and gray, always on the edge of the light, always watching. We compared notes, dates, locations. It matched up eerily well. To this day, I don't hike Pine Hollow at night. Even driving past it gives me a knot in my gut, because somewhere in those trees is something that knows my name, and it's waiting for the lights to go out. Story 5. The Locked Room at the Boarding School. I spent my senior year at an old boarding school in upstate New York, the kind with ivy crawling up the stone walls, fireplaces in every hall, and traditions so old no one remembered their origins. One building on campus always stood out, Greystone Hall, a 4-story brick dorm with iron fire escapes. Its top floor was sealed off decades earlier after a maintenance accident, according to the school brochure. No students were allowed past the 3rd floor. That, of course, made it irresistible. On weekends, a few of us would climb the fire escape just to peek through the dusty 4th-floor windows. They were blacked out with paper from the inside. Rumors swirled: a fire, a student who disappeared, a science lab gone wrong. No one could prove anything. In October, right before midterms, my roommate Evan dared me to sneak into the 4th floor with him. "We'll be legends," he said. The plan was simple. Wait until the night watchman made his rounds, slip through the 3rd-floor attic door, and climb the narrow stairwell to the sealed level. We timed it perfectly. At 1 a.m., the halls were dead silent, moonlight pooling on the wooden floors. We crept up the final staircase and found the door to the 4th floor chained and padlocked. But decades of moisture had rusted the hinges. One good shove with a screwdriver, and the wood splintered enough to slip through. Inside smelled like old plaster and something sweet rotten. Our flashlights cut through decades of dust. Rows of dorm rooms lined the hallway, doors warped shut. Peeling paint curled like dead skin. The air felt heavier, colder. We passed an old bulletin board still covered in yellowed flyers for dances and debate club meetings from 1974. At the far end of the hall was a single door painted black, its knob wrapped in frayed rope. Above it, someone had scrawled in chalk, "Don't open." Naturally, that was the one we picked. Evan tried the knob. It didn't turn. He grinned and pulled a small crowbar from his backpack. "Souvenir time," he whispered. The moment the door cracked, a smell of damp earth and metal spilled out. Inside was a small room with no windows. On the floor lay a circle of symbols carved into the wood, blackened candles long melted to stubs. The walls were covered with old chalk drawings, faces, spirals, dozens of eyes. In the center of the circle sat a wooden chair facing the corner. Chains bolted it to the floor. I whispered, "This isn't a science lab." Then, the door swung shut behind us. At first we thought it was a draft, but when Evan tried to open it, the knob wouldn't budge. My flashlight flickered, then died, plunging us into near darkness. Only his beam remained, shaking wildly across the symbols. From somewhere in the corner came a low hiss, like air escaping a pipe. But there were no pipes. Then the chair creaked. We both froze. Evan's light swung to it just as the backrest twitched, scraping the floor. A shadow rose from the chair, thin as smoke, but shaped like a hunched figure, head bowed. "Do you see that?" Evan whispered. The shadow lifted its head, eyes, or what looked like hollow sockets, opened where its face should be. I lunged at the door, slamming my shoulder until the wood cracked. Evan dropped his flashlight, grabbed my arm, and together we rammed it again. On the third hit, the frame splintered and we spilled into the hallway. The door slammed shut behind us with a deafening crack. We didn't stop running until we were back in our own room, lungs burning, fingers trembling. Neither one of us spoke the rest of the night. The next morning, the maintenance crew found the attic stairwell sealed again, padlocked with a new chain as if we'd never been there. When we told our friends, no one believed us. Years later, I found an archived newspaper clipping about Greystone Hall. In 1974, a student died during an occult experiment in a fourth-floor dorm room. The school quietly sealed the level and banned students from entering. Sometimes, I dream of that chair, the symbols and the shadow rising like smoke. In the dream, I never make it out.